Hello, you're listening to WPPMLP in Philadelphia and watching live on PhillyCam TV on Comcast and Verizon. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and you're watching the People Power Lunch Hour Show. On today's episode, we are going to talk about sexual harassment, and we'll be speaking with representatives from the Coalition for Restaurant Safety and Health. They'll be talking about the work that they do to organize trainings, collect feedback from workers who are dealing with sexual harassment, and tell you how you can support their work. In the second half of the show, we'll be speaking about the current FCC's proposed regulations that will affect community media stations, including public access centers like PhillyCam and LPFM stations across the country. We'll have all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour Show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Again, I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. Today we're talking about an important issue, and that is sexual harassment. According to the Marketplace Edison research poll, at least 1/5 of Americans experience sexual harassment in the workplace. That number increases when we talk with women. 27% of women report experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace. That only includes a number of women that feel comfortable enough to report that happening. Many others, as we know, keep silent about that and do not report that behavior. On today's show, we're going to talk with a member, Robyn Richardson, who's a worker leader from the Coalition for Restaurant Safety and Health, also known as CRUSH. They're a coalition of advocacy and government groups in Philadelphia who recognize that more needs to be done to prevent sexual harassment in our workplaces. Their mission is to provide employers and employees with the support necessary to prevent and eradicate sexual harassment in their workplaces. They believe a workplace free of sexual harassment and dehumanizing treatment is needed to ensure the values of dignity, respect, and hospitality in our society. And their vision is to make a permanent change within the Philadelphia restaurant industry where sexual harassment policies and practices are in place at a majority of establishments. And according to their website, they say restaurant workers are particularly vulnerable to sexual harassment by both customers and coworkers. Robyn Richardson, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Vanessa.
Thank you for doing this work. I worked in the restaurant industry for many, many years. I think that most of us, no matter where you work, are not immune from this and have both experienced and seen many others also be subjected to it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this work.
Well, I've been a part of the hospitality industry now 14 years now. I'm also a full-time college student, culinary and business. So I've been inside of the hospitality field for years. And I started organizing with Crush because I've been affected by sexual harassment personally. It's like I've always been the only female at a lot of jobs that I've been because I'm back of the house. And it's like, just because of my gender, I have been singled out. And I've had occurrences where people take advantage of me or my gender. And it's like through Crush, I can speak out about the violence that actually happens inside of restaurants.
One of the things I like about this is the solidarity, right? Because often people who experience this, especially if they are the only kind of their gender, they don't have other people to maybe speak to about it, and maybe even their bosses, upper management as well. They feel like they're not able to come to them to make a complaint or get some support. Can you talk more about some of the work that Crush is doing to get feedback and to better understand what's happening here in Philadelphia?
So we are actually trying to compose a storyboard. So we are taking the stories of people that we are surveying. We also have a survey project, and we are using those surveys to collect data to see exactly who are the perpetrators inside of these restaurants. Is the violence and harm coming from either coworkers, other staff members? Are they coming from the patrons itself inside of the restaurants? And we're using that data to try to change policy and make sure that our prevention trainings will be more effective to change the culture inside of the restaurant industry.
What is some of the feedback that you've received? I mean, is this something that's pretty pervasive, like happening everywhere? Have people felt comfortable telling their stories and what I guess I'm just trying to understand what is the scope of the problem? What are people dealing with?
Well, I mean, some people are comfortable to share their stories with us and allow us to survey them, but sexual harassment is such a touchy subject. It's like because it's such a touchy subject, people don't necessarily speak out, or they fear that they're going to be retaliated against by an employer if they speak out against management, or they are ashamed and they don't want to feel further shame by speaking out and stepping out and stepping up for themselves.
Yeah, especially if you need that job, right?
All right,
And
definitely.
and you've been there for many years. You maybe you finally getting benefits. Um, it might mean having to give all that up, right?
Right, especially like I'm a woman in the industry, and it's a hard place to be in a male-dominated field where there's mostly men, and it is me. And because of me or who I am, that's why I haven't spoken my story. I haven't told my past because I was afraid I was going to lose a job, or I worked so hard to get there. I don't want to be shamed and put beneath of the platform that I've gotten to.
Yeah, and so I'd like to sort of talk about like what sexual harassment means because I feel like sometimes maybe those who experience it think of it as one thing, and the perpetrators maybe may not often realize that what they're doing constitutes harassment. Some of the things I've personally witnessed are the comments, right?
Right.
Especially, I worked as a bartender for many years. And obviously, people drinking alcohol are going to make all kinds of inappropriate comments, but a lot of sexual comments, objectifying people's bodies, inappropriate touching and grabbing, people who make unwanted sexual advances, um, people who even are videotaping you, taking your picture
Right.
without your consent or knowledge. What are some of the other things that constitute sexual harassment?
So, sexual harassment can be classified in two stages. It could be quid pro quo or a hostile work environment. So, within hostile work environment, that means that it's not necessarily you're using your power to gain of something from a person. Like with quid pro quo, they use their power to gain something. If you do not sleep with me, I will take away your days or I will fire you. If you do not sleep with me, I will give you less time and I won't give you exactly what you need. Or if you do sleep with me, you can have a promotion. With a hostile work environment would be the energy of the room. It's like someone is inappropriately touching you or giving you unwanted advances. When you go into the environment, you feel as though you're drained and you don't want to be there. You start to change who you are because it's like you're uncomfortable in that situation. There are a lot of issues with self in a hostile work environment because people change things, little things about like the way that they dress so that someone won't approach them as, oh, you have a big bottom, let me poke at your bottom, or use that. So they'll wear bigger clothes. Hostile work environments can also change the way that they live their home life when they leave the job, and it brings a lot of anxiety into their family lives.
Yeah, people have also experienced being asked to wear more revealing, tighter clothing
Yeah,
as well, right?
definitely.
To generate more profits, which is also like another form of exploitation. So I was recently at a sexual harassment training, and it also said or told us that hostile work environments can, like, you don't have to be the victim of sexual harassment, but you could be like overhearing people talk about their sexual exploits, or maybe you're like
Right.
seeing somebody else being harassed or making inappropriate comments. So that too qualifies.
Yes, it definitely does. Just because the statute of language, necessarily a person doesn't have to agree with a language to be consenting for it. So if there's like dick humor
So humor that's like crass, that's sexual in nature.
and lewd in nature, it's like that is unwanted. Not most people go to work to talk about sex. They go to work to actually work their jobs and perform a service.
So even if you're just like overhearing it and like the folks in the next cubicle are talking about their sexual life, that can be also considered sexual harassment and like inappropriate in the workplace. So again, if you're watching or listening, and this has happened to you, there are resources. That's the good news, right? Because
Definitely.
I think our goal here is to make people not feel alone, right? That if you're going through this, if somebody you work with is going through this, that you can reach out and you can get support for what you're doing. So there's different ways you're attacking that, right? Like you have a support network and you also have training. Let's
Yep.
let's talk about preventing it of happen, because that would be ideal, right? Like preventing it from happening in the first place. But then if it does happen, people can then take action. So, what types of trainings or education are available, or that maybe we would like to see implemented in some of these places?
Well, with prevention training, we want to teach the staff, and not just staff management as well, because we believe that the employer and the employee are together and trying to change the culture. We give them consent training so they understand exactly what consent is. We also allow them to speak to each other, and we do exercises so that they understand what is their comfortability, what one person would allow another person would not. So we open up the question of what exactly is consent, and what are people's levels of comfortability. Also, in our trainings, we teach about accountability in the situation. If you are a bystander and you see something's happening with your coworker, you are trained to speak up about it and be accountable for the situation, instead of just letting it be overlooked.
Yeah, one of the things we learned in our training was like to have a phrase ready whenever somebody says something inappropriate. So we all practice like what's going to be our phrase. And my phrase is like, that's not appropriate for the workplace. You know, that's
Yeah.
inappropriate. And another woman who's like a mom, she said like, that's not a nice thing to say. Like
Right.
that is not cool. Some people were gonna make a face or say like, oh, that's my cue to leave the room. And so having this kind of like phrase memorized, if you're a bystander, like if you see something, it's a good idea to let the person know that that was uncomfortable, inappropriate, or like that didn't feel good after saying it. Even if the person, because sometimes the people themselves, especially if they're younger people, if they're students or interns, people who are new, they might not say anything, even
Right.
though they're like feeling pretty terrible about it. And so that's why bystanders is like really important, right?
Right. Because I think about new times that I've been on the job and I've witnessed lewd behavior inside the kitchen, and I've giggled or laughed it off because, this wasn't my place to intervene in their situation that they've already had. So I didn't understand that, okay, maybe she was uncomfortable. So instead of me laughing or going along with it, speak up that I'm uncomfortable so that I could help the situation.
Right, because that's a defense mechanism when we
Yeah.
kind of laugh. We're like, ah, okay. And so we need to stop doing that, especially if there's another, like, if you're by yourself, I mean, obviously do whatever you can to keep yourself safe and
Right.
sane. But if there's many of us and we see that, we need to speak up and be in solidarity with one another.
Right, definitely. It's like power comes with numbers. And if one person speaks out, okay, that's one person, but that one conversation will spark another and another and another. And it'll form a culture of speaking up instead of silence.
Yeah, and one of the other things is like sometimes people are caught off guard and they might be like in shock that something is happening and they don't speak up at the moment. But I think it's always a good idea to check in with people afterwards. Like, hey, I
Yeah.
noticed that that happened or somebody said this to you. How did that make you feel? Right? And that's like another opportunity to kind of like bear witness to what happened and like offer mutual support and solidarity. So, because I mean, some things happen and you just, you're like, whoa, I can't, that happened so fast. I
Right.
cat got my tongue. I couldn't even find the words. But there's still, you could still be helpful after the fact.
Right, definitely. Like if you see it, speak up. Speak up and help that person. It's like if we form a culture of accountability, we will change the past transgressions of our previous culture. Let's make change.
Yeah, and speak up to the person who might have done it and said, "Hey, did
Right.
I heard you say that and that was kind of inappropriate, Did you recognize that you made that person uncomfortable?"
Which
And
is also a great thing because sometimes people don't understand levels of what is okay. I think about the cultural differences. Someone might be from a different culture. They might be not necessarily American. And they might kiss you when they greet you. Maybe they're from France, and their first thought is to kiss you. But what if I'm a person that I don't like to be touched? They haven't had that conversation.
right, again, going back to consent, like what are you comfortable with? And we might be friends for a long
Yeah.
time that work together because that happens in the service industry. You always want to like help get your friend a job. And we might joke about things because we're friends that might not be appropriate to joke about in front of other
Right.
people. So there's also like that like level of familiarity, and like recognizing like you can have these conversations because you consent to it and you're friends, but like not in the workplace. Like that has to happen like outside of here. And that again requires a level of self-awareness.
Right. Self awareness and professionalism as well, because a workplace is for work. Conversations can be had. No one wants to be in their workplace and dread being there because they don't have friendly conversations or have social
Like the etiquette and
connections.
to like know
Yeah.
like what's appropriate and what's, and unfortunately like this isn't really taught in high schools and universities. Like we're sent out into the workforce and there's an assumption that you're like you know how to act. you know um but people need training.
Definitely.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about those trainings. If you're just tuning in, you're listening and watching the People Power Lunch Hour show here on Philly Cam TV and on WPPM. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We're talking with Robyn Richardson. She's a worker leader at the Coalition for Restaurant Safety and Health, and we're going to continue this conversation about sexual harassment. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We're here at Philly Cam, broadcasting live from our Center City studios. And of course, on the People Power Lunch Hour Show, we like to talk to organizers here in Philadelphia and South Jersey who are working on various social justice issues. And we want to tell you all about how to get involved, how you can support their campaigns. So this week, we're talking about a very important issue, sexual harassment. Again, earlier in the show, I mentioned that 1/5 of Americans report being the victims of sexual harassment in the workplace. And that number increases when you talk to women. 27% of women report. Again, it does not include the number of women who don't report, which is many. I've never been surveyed, so it's like if you're not even surveyed to begin with. So we know that number is much higher. We're talking with Crush, which is a really great organization here in Philly doing amazing work, led by a bunch of really awesome women, coalition of advocacy and government groups in Philly who recognize that more needs to be done to prevent sexual harassment in our workplaces. Call it Crush for short. And I'm here with Robyn Richardson. And we've just been talking about, the issue of sexual harassment and what people can do to take action. So, I'd like to know more about any specific campaigns or resources that you'd like to tell our audiences about that Crush has to offer.
So we are now embarking, we've been embarking for about 4 months now, a survey project. And with the survey project, we are trying to compose stories of workers to find out exactly who has been their perpetrators, who has been the people to harm them, how they have come to be at a certain job, or have they have had issues and had to leave a job, or what exactly are their experiences. With the survey project, we are actually moving to have a storyboard, which will compile lots of stories of those who were victims who are now who has now risen above the shame, and they're able to speak out to help another. We are asking to grab surveys from as many people as we can that are inside the hospitality industry. There are 13,000 workers inside the hospitality industry inside of the city right now, and we would love to have them.
So, how can people participate in the survey or the storyboard?
To participate, you could either email us at contact@saferestaurantsphilly.org, or you can go to www.saferestaurantsphilly.org. You can reach us there. There's a way and there's a link on our website if you'd like to reach out. You can also call 267-571-6720, or you can personally call 267-979-9477. And my name is Robyn, and I will be that person on that line. If you have a story that you'd like to tell me, or if you'd like to just connect to actually take the survey, I'm always available.
Okay, so they have a hotline. So you can call this hotline. Again, the number is 267-571-6720. And you can go to their website, which is saferestaurantsphilly.org. So I just sort of want to end if maybe not today, tomorrow, next week, maybe next month, you're someone who experiences sexual harassment or a hostile work environment, or maybe you're witnessing it happen to somebody else. What are the steps that you advise people to take? What do you do with that information?
Well, if you give us a call and you give us an instance, we are a coalition. And because we're a coalition, we have certain organizations that help us to help the victims that have been harmed. So we have a few groups of lawyers, but we also have counselors. So if you need help just to figure out what exactly you need help with, we are in a coalition with WAR, which is Women Against Rape, with ROC, with Philipposh, the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations, Community Legal Services, and we use them to help us gain back someone's freedom from oppression, from sexual harassment.
Right, because the actions the steps forward sort of depend on the victim, right? They might want to stay in their job, right?
Right.
Some people might need to leave, but they need to make sure they can be eligible for unemployment. Some people might just want the person removed or have them reprimanded. So it probably depends on the situation and the severity and what the victim sort of wants to do.
Right, because no one should have to put up with sexual harassment. No matter where you're at, no matter where you're employed at, there are ways to handle this situation. And some companies don't have an HR department to fight for you, but Crush will fight for you and make sure that we advise you on all of your rights so that you know your rights.
Okay, so this message is for employers. If you're a manager or a supervisor and someone comes to you, what's the advice that you give to them? Like, how should they treat the situation?
So, as a manager or supervisor, first and foremost, I think that they should hear out the complainant. They should hear exactly what they are telling them so that they can make the next steps to follow up with that person or to address the situation without not addressing it.
Right, and to do the due diligence, right?
Right.
Like, I think there's a certain liability too of having to document it, launch an investigation, and also if maybe you're not the like, maybe we're just coworkers, and you tell me like, I might have to then tell the person who is responsible, this the supervisor or manager or HR person, um, that is responsible. Because that happens a lot too. People complain about it and then nothing happens. It just goes into a black hole. And they might say they're investigating, but there's no real process.
Right. And that is what the past has been. But I can say Philadelphia is moving toward the future. There have been so many restaurants that are been open to us giving our trainings to change the culture inside of there. I want to give a shout out definitely to like Rex 1516, El Compadre. They have tried to give their staffs a leap toward the future. They're giving them a better bet because they want to protect them from sexual harassment, but also train them so they know what it looks like and where it comes from.
Right. So again, just to reiterate, managers, supervisors, and employees, we all need sexual harassment training. Um, Again, it's like, I went to the training and I thought, like, well, I know what sexual harassment is, but then at the training, I was like, oh, but now I know what to do as a supervisor, and now I know what to do as a bystander. And that's important too, right? Because we're not always going to be the victims. We might be the witnesses or the
Right.
people that are seeing it. And it takes that knowledge to be able to take action. And as you said, help people regain their freedom. So
Yes.
also want to shout out Natalia Nicastro with Philipposh, who is a community trainer who does Know Your Rights, health and safety training. Um, and so again, philipposh.org, another organization in the coalition. These trainings are really great for organizations that want to bring somebody in to help people understand sexual harassment. And again, the website. Oh, and the trainings do not cost anything.
Yes,
And
they're completely free.
right. So that is amazing. So there's no excuse now. If you want the training, there are resources here. Can people volunteer? Can they organize with you? How can people get involved if they're like, you know what? I care about this issue and I would love to be a part of the solution.
Yes, we are definitely always looking for volunteers to help and help push this fight forward. The more volunteers that we have, we can have more people to give out surveys, administer surveys, and also we can collect more stories of those who have been harmed.
Well, Robyn, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing this information and for, doing all of this work to help spread the knowledge and help people feel safe in their workplaces.
No, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having Crush inside of the People Power Lunch Hour.
That's right. It's all about people power here. at Philly Cam. So we're going to take a short break and we're going to talk about another issue. And that's all about what's happening at the FCC at their next meeting. They're proposing a bunch of regulations that will have an impact on community media. And of course, here at Philly Cam, we're always interested in protecting our First Amendment rights and our ability to speak out on all these issues. We need these platforms to be able to talk about stuff like this. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.